morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
Hello, mate.
You'll have to my voice today. It's a little bit fucked, but yeah, no, such is life. But yeah, we'll give it 5 more minutes. How many? Yeah, 5 more minutes, and then we'll get into stuff. But how's everyone's weekend been so far?
Very quiet.
Oh, hello. Puppy. Hey.
Ja, zet komst op je.
How was the London meetup, Sam?
It was good, mate. It was interesting, but it was funny. Yeah, it was a good night. Good night out. Very funny. Still suffering from it today because I'm old and feeble nowadays. But yeah, it's life.
Dobra, wyłącz to, bo ja potrzebuję to spotkanie obejrzeć.
How many people we've got in it so far? 30?
Nearly 30, yeah. Give it a few minutes.
Sleeping in it. Can everyone like hear me properly today? Like, do I sound louder and clearer and shit, or not really?
Yeah.
Ja, ik snap het.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Good. Yeah, so, well, let's get started, right? So today we're going to be talking about order flow, right? And the importance of knowing like about alignment, right? And which order flows we need to shift, what will likely happen when one of them shifts, what will likely be, or what's the likely next objective, all of this sort of stuff, right? So like Friday's price action was perfect for it, right? So if we just start out, it's basically like, it's very similar to looking at structure, right? Like when we're looking, say, at order flow on the 15M, an order flow shift on the 15M, like a change of character, right, is a break of structure on the lower time frames, right? But then we've got to be aware that what is going to happen next is not the continuation or
Is he gone already?
Yeah, pigeons.
He needs to get some better internet, doesn't he? Well, let's.
We need to buy him a falcon, maybe. Who will help with pigeons.
Yeah. We need to do something. Right. Oh, I think it's reconnecting. Let's have a look. Let's see. Right. Yeah, he's gone. Let me share my screen for a minute till he comes back. H. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Cool. Right. So for me, order flow is most obviously powerful when you're with structure, right? It's because this is where a lot of people, I think, struggle with order flow because you're on the wrong side of the market. So 4H order flow, like we can see here, we was talking about the other day, we have this whole range, understanding that we are bearish, as we can see. This is obviously our pullback phase. This is where order flow can be disrupted because it's a pullback phase. It needs liquidity to generate the push up. As soon as we get the shift here back in order flow, we can see now that these always get respected until our objective of this low down here is complete. Now, understanding that we've taken a low out, we're going to get some form of pullback. We get this order flow taken out here, and we can expect some form of POI up here to then get respected. So something like this. Then once we get a shift back, we can then look to target lows, and order flow and range should get respected until that objective is complete. All right. Oh no, he's 2 secs. He's calling me now. Yeah, he's coming back in a minute. Okay, cool. Now this is where as well, time frames are super important, because if we're looking at the 4H, then obviously we're targeting the 4H lows. If we're going on the 15M, right, order flow is going to target 15M lows until they're taken out. Then obviously we're going to get some form of pullback. Where a lot of people, I think, struggle is getting stuck on the 1 minute and expecting order flow to continue until, you know, 4H lows go, when obviously that's not going to be the case. Let's get there's an example. There's a nice example if I can find. Here. So get rid of that. Right here, for example, down here, we understand that we're bearish, and until this low goes, obviously we get everything gets respected until this low goes. Then we're in a pullback phase. As we can see, price is all over the place. It's taking out lows, taking out highs until we get back up to here. We then get a shift in order flow, which we can see this gets taken. We get this range up here respected, and then everything gets respected. Nothing, no range or order flow gets disrupted until a low goes. Right? Does that make sense to everyone? Because it needs. This is where things get really powerful, and you start getting consistency when you can understand structure with order flow and the objective. Okay, as well, trading with it, you're going to find consistency. When you're going against it and you're in pullback phases, well, I think a lot of people get confused, is when obviously you're going to start taking losses because you're on the wrong side of the market, and order flow is going to get disrupted until you get back to that POI. Is that making sense? Let me see if I can. Has anyone got any questions about that?
I have one. How do you know which low is the objective right now? I mean,
Well,
because,
that's obviously, it's always going to be the visible low, for example, like this, okay? The one that's created, gone on to create a high on that time frame. Otherwise, does that make sense? It's always going to be the low that's created the high or created a new high. For example, this.
so like the structural low, yeah, like swing
Yeah,
low.
so this low here went on to take this high out. Sorry, say that again.
I'm back. Sorry.
Cool.
Yeah, crack on. Okay.
Yeah, so it's always gonna be like the visible low. This high here got taken out by this low, so this is going to be the first target on that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Same with the 4 hour, right? Like I was saying, we get the shift here, comes back, and this here very first target because we're on the 4 hour. Same again for the 1 minute time frame. Okay, like understand, okay, yeah, it might not be far away, this low, but once the low gets taken, the order flow that has been created, like this for example, right? Say this is our low, we come down, we respect. Once the low goes, we can expect these to now be used for liquidity for a unmitigated POI above to, you know, this is going to get disrupted to come back up. Then once we shift, then this is going to be our new low for target. So we can then trade the ranges for the first target, but then expect to take some partials off here because you're going to expect then potentially this to get run if you're coming into something higher time frame down here. Does that make sense?
Just throw close down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Just want to
What
crack
bit of
on,
price
Sam?
did you go? Yeah, what bit of price did you go through that bit of price I was explaining, or did you do something else?
Oh, I was just talking about this on the 4H, to be honest.
Yeah.
So if I, do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, hold on 2 seconds. I just need to open up trading view. Something wrong with my network settings. So it keeps trying to connect to a network that doesn't fucking exist anymore, which is annoying. Hold on, where am I? Right, cool.
I'll stop sharing, yeah.
Down here, right? Like when we see, just remember this. Right, when we see this, right, like if we start this on 4, right? Right.
Oh, God. You're going again. Not just me, is it?
No, he's gone. It is.
Yeah, he's gone.
I think he's using it as an excuse. I think he's hungover still.
Right, now my internet's working again. Fucking thing, man. Mate, this is bad even for my fucking internet today. Can you wake up and like actually work? Oh, this is fun. All right, let's start this again. Right, okay, so this, right, if we're looking at this, right, what we got, like it's all essentially structure, order flow, anything, it's all the same name for different shit, right? It's just orders, right? But the reason we say structure is king is because it's the easiest way to view it, right? And it's the most significant shifts in order flow, right? So like here, we can see we created this whole demand range here, right, that took out this previous supply range, right? We'll mark all this, like what we'll do is we'll mark all of this on different time frames, and then we'll go down and see how we could have played it, right? So we have a previous, this whole thing really, but we can refine it to like this whole range here, right? Is the last supply range that broke, well, actually it's here, but yeah. So the last supply range breaks low, right? So then we get this shift here. This now gets respected, right? It comes back down. Misses this mitigation, but comes down into like the higher time frame mitigation, which would be daily order flow, right? Creates this whole range, right? That then gets respected, but it gets mitigated multiple times, right? Until we see another shift in order flow down here when it pops, right? But we can spot this on different time frames anyway, right? So then we've got this last range here because we see some form of supply, although it hasn't broken swing structure, so it's not the strongest supply, right? Which is why it ends up getting run, because it hasn't created a true shift in 4H order flow, right? So now we're seeing this respected. Eventually they build up enough orders down here, grab enough liquidity, whatever you want to call it, right? To pop and create that. But then because of the higher time frame at play, this gets respected, right? That order flow breaks. Now we start seeing this. We see like smaller ranges, right? But it's that whole thing of like reading it via size as well, right? Not just looking at every technical fucking thing and going, oh, well, because it did this, it now has to do that, right? It's also about like creating a bit of intuition around it, right? But anyway, yeah, then we start to see some form of bullish order flow, right? This is respected, you know, we create other ranges within here, blah, 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 blah. We create this gets run, right? So then what is the next likely objective? Well, then the next likely objective is the swing low going, right? Because we've shifted, like had a really big shift of order flow here. So now this is likely to go, right? Yeah, we may pull back on lower time frames to mitigate out of whatever positions, but this is just 4-hour shit, right? So yeah, now if we go and look at this on like 15M, right, we can see sort of more what's at play here, right? Like, especially if we look at this, right? So here, right, we get our first shift in order flow, right? This range here, oh, this is the whole range. It's always the whole buy to sell as well. So from here to the top here, right? So that gets disrespected, right? So now we can say that this whole range from here to here is our larger demand range, right? So this is what we want to see go, right? We see another smaller time frame shift, well, smaller shift in order flow, right? Because we come back bearish here, right? Then we see this whole thing get taken, right? What happens now? Well, this turns into our demand range, right? So now we come down, we respect that, and off we pop to the moon, right? Create this whole range, right? Price comes out here, and this is already like you had to say this is now like partly mitigated, right? Because we've had a break of that range and it's come back down to mitigate it, right? It's not fully mitigated. We've still got other stuff in here, you know, like this, right? But then we've got like this, this here, right? This sell to buy. So that's another small range, right? And we've got this, right? Already partly mitigates here, but this is where noticing like bits that aren't mitigated, right? So we can still look at this as a valid place to potentially get a pullback, but we have to be aware that a trade from here is very much a pullback, right? If we're trading from over here somewhere, or a trade from here is very much a pullback, right? It's probably not like, especially from here, because we've had to take out a lot of significant stuff then, right? It's probably not going to continue, right? So we get this whole range here. See when this, I mean, it gets tapped here, but then when it gets a proper mitigation, we see some form of shift in order flow, right? So we can take longs from like here, whatever, right? But then we have to think, okay, well, again, is this formed correctly? All of this sort of stuff, no, right? So it gets run, we mitigate this, which is the significant unmitigated thing in this PI, but so another day. But yeah, then we create this, right? We even create a little range here, right? Order flow continues bullish, right? Here we just missed the mitigation of this, I believe. Do we hit it? No, we just missed it. But yeah, we just missed that, right? But you notice when we do come down, oh no, we missed it there as well. But yeah, then we see like these smaller ranges getting created, right? Like here, we get another demand range because we create a sell to buy that the high pops, right? And then we start seeing, well, we see another little demand range here because you can see we just trade above that wick, I believe. Okay. Or do we trade above it? Yeah, we just trade above it, right? So then we start seeing supply coming into the market, right? There's our supply range. Right, so if we're trading Asia, we can say, okay, like we can take this down here, maybe it misses target, whatever, because, you know, there's some other shit at play at that point in time that we can't necessarily see or make logic of. But yeah, then we create all these, you can see every time we pull back, create another range, pull back, create another range, right? Pull back here, create another range here. This range goes, so now we can say, okay, well, likely we've seen a shift in order flow to confirm like the bigger order flow at that point, which we need to be aware is this, right? So we can say, okay, maybe we can, you know, if we're trading Asia, maybe we can take a long to run this high, see what happens after that, right? Create another range here. Create another range here. All right, create another range here. All right, gets respected. Another one here gets respected for the short term. Right, but now we need to be aware that what has happened, right? Well, if we're looking at higher time frame stuff here, we can tell that we're in this whole larger mitigated range, right? So if we see a shift in order flow, that now gives us alignment with 15M and 4H, right? So what's the likely thing to happen then? Well, the likely thing to happen then is like 15M to at least continue. We have other various things saying that this high won't hold, right? The fact that it's a discount, the fact that it forms like over a long period of time, right? This high forms nicely initially, but then this whole high forms over a very long period of time. So likely it's going to get run when we come back to mitigate, you know, something down here, right? And we need to move up to premium. But yeah, now we can start saying, okay, well, we can expect these ranges, right, to get respected. Now, interestingly, right, we create another range here, right? Now, why? Just looking at this time frame, right? This is how you ideally need to start thinking, right? You need to be able to see what's happening on higher time frames and lower time frames, right? So why does this range get run? Who like what? Someone give me some theories.
Because I think we started some bullish order flow during the pullback.
There's a different reason, but yeah, there is bullish order. But why does bullish order flow get created there? That's the question. On the 15M, why, when we have aligned with 4H swing structure, right? Why do we then end up pulling back and taking out the 15M range? What would make sense?
To get buyers trapped on the wrong side and sellers.
Nope.
It's fuel the move to the downside, like to grab liquidity, because now they've taken the lows, it's caused for higher prices, so they'll use the first pullback as liquidity.
Look. This low here is a 4H range, right? Here to here. So when that low gets taken, we can expect 15M like order flow to switch because 4H is gone, right? So 4H will now need to pull back, which would potentially give cause for the 15M to get taken, but then 4H order flow is aligned, right? So most likely 4H order flow is going to continue. So we'll see another shift in 15M order flow back to bearish, right? But it's knowing that, like, that's what's happened. A4H low is gone. I should probably not trade continuations from this range right now until I see a shift on 15M there, right? But here you can trade lower time frame stuff because you can say that this is the extreme, right? This is the last buy to sell. So if the 4H order flow is going to hold, right, it will come from an extreme area, right? So then we see this dropping, right? Well, this gets respected, and then this brings us nicely onto like this move over here, right? Because I saw a bunch of people caught it, really nice trade, right? But there was a better way to get in, right? So, and I'll show you, like, this is why, like, I guess for a lot of you guys, that trade was like 1 to 15, 1 to 20, something like that, right? For me, that's like 1 to 30, right? Because I think of it like this. I'm like, right, where's going to be the most precise area that I can get in, right, that's going to give me the best chance to get a tiny stop, right? So look here, right, again, we've got this 4H range, right? This is the whole larger range, but we see 15M order flow shift here. All right, so cool. What do we need to wait for? Well, ideally, what we want to wait for, unless we're catching like the top up here, right? What we then want to wait for is 15M to go, right? So where's the 15M change of character, right? Well, here is our last sell to buy range that breaks a high, right? So that is our 15M bearish OF shift, right? Cool. Let's see what happens when that gets run, right? So this gets run, right? So we've had a change of character. We know that this is a shift in order flow. Another good way to look at like whether 15M chalk is really going to hold, right? It's just got 5M and just go, did it break structure? If it broke structure on 5M, which this does eventually, it's a good bet that this will hold, right? But yeah, right. So now we need to look at this from a higher degree again, right? So now we're looking at this from 15M. So where is our last buy to sell that breaks structure? Well, it's here, right? That's our last buy to sell. But we can already like look at this from a 1M perspective because we have something small and refined it, right? We have the last piece of buying price action here, right? So we don't even really need to refine this on 1M because we can say, okay, if this comes in here, we can trade the seconds. But what we need to be aware of is the fact that this break of structure on 1M is 15M order flow changing, right? This is now likely not to hold because it's going to need to mitigate something on 15M, which is up here, right? This range was already broken here. So this OB is invalid, right? This will get run like 98 times out of 100, you know? Right. So where's our 1M OB? Well, funnily enough, that lines up straight with that wick, right? If we look at that wick, it's not mitigated at all, right? There's still even a little bit of imbalance, right? So all of this is now our inducement for this, right? Because we need to be aware that we've had a 15M OF shift. So we're no longer thinking about stuff from a 1M perspective, right? We need to think about it from the higher time frame perspective, because now 15M order flow has realigned with 15M structure. Likely we are going to get a 15M pullback, not a 1M pullback, right? Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So cool. All right. What happens? Funnily enough, that gets run, that gets mitigated. For me, this is where I'm going to be like, okay, I've seen a reaction from that. Cool. I'll just fucking sell it here. Do you know what I mean? Because now I can get in, right? I've seen a flip and a chop here. I can just hit this somewhere here, right? My stop is above this, right? This isn't valid. It's done nothing. The only area it can mitigate is this, right? So what happens, right? Well, instead of going, okay, well, I can find some random 1 MOB, right? And just give my stop a bit of breathing space, right? And use a 2-pip stop, which is fine. Like, it's still a good trade, right? But that turns this trade from a 1 to whatever it was, 1 to 15, something like that, right? Into a 1 to 30. You see how powerful this shit is when you start thinking of it fucking logically like this, right? Like, it's the key to it all, right? Like, it's thinking, always focus on the bigger picture play, right? Not the smaller picture. Smaller picture is fucking irrelevant, right? Like, the seconds timeframes are essentially useless apart from at significant areas. The 1M is essentially useless apart from at significant areas, right? But now we have got, right, everything's aligned again, right? So we have 4H bearish structure, right? We have 4H bearish order flow. We have 15M bearish structure. We now have 15M bearish order flow. We now have 1M bearish order flow. Everything's going to get respected, right? until we break another significant low, which would probably be like looking at this on a higher time frame, there's probably nothing here, right? So after this, we then really want to stop trading those continuations until we see what happens, right? But yeah, bearish order flow, what happens, right? Create a new range, that range gets mitigated because everything's aligned, right? So this is where it becomes super fucking powerful, right? Everything's still aligned. We can trade that. We can trade that, right? Because we're all pro-trending, right? It's not a complex pullback. Complex pullbacks, you don't want to do this shit, right? Because complex pullbacks, they don't work the same, right? Like complex pullbacks, you have to be very aware of everything that's happening and only trade from good areas, really. But we'll do another thing on complex pullbacks at some point in time. Right.
Sam, just a really quick question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, yeah.
So I was just wondering around here, this area, is this not a range as well that then gets broken, or?
Yeah, to a degree, but this is unmitigated, right? So it's just looking at the last unmitigated things. Like here, this gets broken, right? But this is the last real unmitigated thing, right? So it's not just following every single fucking range. It's picking like the last unmitigated things that look significant. Do you know what I mean? Like this one actually has some structure within it, right? We create a low, we create a high. It flips this, right? This one also flips that this is the extreme that's flipped it. So likely price will travel back to a higher price because it's better price for the big guns to get in, right? Then we see this get run. So now likely, does that make sense, mate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure how to differentiate between the two live, I guess, yet, but I need to look into it a little bit more, probably.
Yeah, it comes with time as well, man. You know, it really does.
Sam, what about the extreme? Because from what I understand, it's not mitigated, the last one. Yeah, this one.
Yeah, but why does it need to be mitigated now? Now we're creating new supply, right? We have everything. Everything is pro-trend, right? This range is supply. This is our mate Jeff over at Goldman, right? Getting into the market, right? Why is he going to take himself out to mitigate this right now when everything is pro-trend and in his favor, so he can just keep selling? Right? He has no resistance. There's nothing here saying, cool, like this is why when we get higher time frame shifts, right? So here we've had a break of a low, right? Then we see like a higher time frame shift, right? Because now something on a higher time frame needs to happen. Right, and then we end up seeing this, right? This little thing gets half like what that sort of like, you see what I mean? After we've broken structure, right? Like significant areas, stuff starts to get a bit dicey, right? So this is where you don't want to be saying, okay, I'm going to trade every single one of these. And like these ones here, if we're getting into these, right? We want to be TPing all of these at this low, right? Anything apart from this trade here, because this trade we can expect to be respected until we take out this low, right? Because that's the higher time frame objective, right? And this is the higher time frame range, right? But here, right, we don't know now how deep the higher time frame is going to need to pull back, right? We can only assess that when the pullback is finished and we see another shift in order flow. Make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So so we should track the supply chain, yeah.
Yeah.
And probably the extreme won't be mitigated, but if another one is mitigated, then we follow and marking the supply. And at some point in time, there could be a demand that actually break the previous supply because there is another one upper that was unmitigated. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There was another higher time frame OB that wasn't mitigated, and we had a higher time frame break of structure, right? Like these are all breaks of structure, right? This is a break of structure. This is a break of a larger range, right? So this is like essentially a whole 4-hour range, something like that from looking at it, right? Let's just see. But this is what I mean. I can sort of half tell this shit. Yeah, there you go. Look, it's a whole 4-hour range, right? This to this. Right, and then we've got this to this. We see this last buy to sell 4H, right? So when that goes, we don't want to keep trading these continuations because we're not really sure what's going to fucking happen at the moment, right? Because price could say, okay, I need some more liquidity, right? I'll come up and I'll mitigate this, or I'll mitigate this, or I'll mitigate the extreme hit, right? So, but here we know that this trade here, right? If we're reading it well, we know that the objective is this, because you can see impulse, correction, right? Continuation of higher time frame order flow. So likely this won't get taken out. But once we break this low, because it's higher time frame, any of this could get taken out, right? So now we don't, you know, we already want to be positioned in the trades, right? And then you see here, we get this continuation. Right, price comes up, mitigates this last thing here and dies, right? But here, you know, we're like, people are looking at this going, oh, well, it's come to an extreme that shifted order flow, it's going to move now. No, it's fucking not, because this low is weak, right? If we're looking at the higher time frame objective, the higher time frame objective is to take out this low and create a new range, right? And then we have to see what happens when price comes up here. But now we've broken structure on a higher time frame, so likely we're going to get a higher time frame pullback, right? So once we start seeing shifts in order flow again, right, and we can, like, this is where we want to track higher time frame shift, right? So here we create a new range here, right? This buy to sell, right? So this is going to be a significant 1M range because we can see it on 15M, right? So once that range gets disrespected, right, we can start thinking, okay, well, we haven't seen a change of character yet, but we've seen some form of supply get taken out. Right, now let's see what happens, right? Does this low break? If this low doesn't break, right, then this high becomes weak. And we're targeting potentially this area, potentially something up here, because this is our whole 4H range, right, that hasn't been mitigated yet. Like properly, it's been mitigated once, but there's other stuff within here, like there's a flip here, you know, there's a flip up here, right? Yeah, we have equal highs, there's stuff like that, but we've still got jobs to do up there, right? So now if this low doesn't break, we can say, okay, potentially all of this on the 15M now becomes liquidity, because we need to see an objective met on 4H. Right, and it's this whole thinking of stuff in different time frames and different, you know, like having importance of time frames and what you want to see where, right? So like here, once we run this low, right, we're not looking for 1M stuff because we need to see something change on a higher time frame, right? Like ideally 15M, before we can have any conviction that we are going to see the start of that higher time frame pullback, right? Like, you know, even over here, if we look at daily, right? Daily, we have a break of structure here, right? Well, here, right? But here, before we start taking the longs, right, we're going to need to see something. What we can trade it on different time frames, but the safest way would be say, okay, I've seen daily break structure, so now I need to see, like, I'll see a daily pullback, but how am I going to know that daily pullback's coming? Well, I'll see a 4H change of character, right? 4H changes character, and we get continued longs up to, you know, something up there, but it's a pullback of the daily, right? And then 4H realigns like there, right? When it takes out this little high, this little low, right? And then we have our new 4H supply range. What happens? Price continues to fucking melt off, right? But it's all understanding those higher time frame, lower time frame, and how they will correlate, right? Because it's impossible to say, you know, like, well, it's not possible. It's very silly to say that, you know, I've seen a 1M shift in order flow at an extreme, but 15M's, like 15M is 15M has bullish order, bullish order flow, bearish market, right? So we need to see 15M realign and complete a 15M pullback then to trade, and then 1M to shift all in line, right? It's that whole structural thing again. Let me actually draw it out, it'll probably be easier. But here, right, we're seeing 15M bearish structure, right? But then we start to see this bullish order flow, right? then we see the 15M go, right? So now these 1M ranges are not so significant because we'll need to meet a 15M objective, right? 15M objective is met, and then we see 1M up here realign, right? And now likely all of these ranges, because we have true alignment now, right? Likely all of these ranges are going to get respected until this low goes, right? And then there may be an unmitigated range, like a 1M thing, or if another 15M thing in here, right, that we'll see get respected, right? And that's why when everyone's like, oh, it's going to come back to the extreme, yeah, it will at some point, right? But right now it's not, right? So now we'll see this 15M objective met again in this continuation here, but again, on 1M, we'll need to see shifts in order flow, right? So we'll see this on 1M, so we can trade this pullback, being aware that it's a pullback, right? And then we get, 15M alignment again. So now, 1M alignment, 15M, right? But then we may see something down here on this. Right, but then we might see, like here, we've stayed within bearish order flow, right? Because we haven't had a 15M. We may see something like this on 15M, right? So when we come back up here, we need to see another shift and pullback on 15M to get that true alignment again, right? So now we'll see like 1M do some weird, funky shit in here, right? And we'll see all these little random shifts in order flow up here, right? This is where complex pullbacks are a fucker, because you see stuff like this, not respecting anything because, it's a complex pullback. They don't work the same, right? Because not everything's aligned, right? So here we get 1M realign at an extreme, right? Sorry, that's a very bad drawing, but yeah. But now we see 15M go again, right? So we may see 1M order flow get run to meet 15M objective, right? Realigns, trade every fucking range to the low.
Can I just say something? This is why I'm happy to take ranges that are here and here. I know we're low in the leg, but I understand that our objective is to take that low, and they should not get run until that gets taken. That's why I'm confident in taking trades from range to range to range. This might only be like a 1 to 4 or whatever, but it's a 1 to 4, and I'm happy because I understand the bigger picture and what the objective is.
And it's a high probability trade as well, right? This is what you have to understand, is that trade is just as good. Like, again, it's that whole thing. If it's the only time, I know a lot of you guys aren't full-time like us, right? But if you're full-time, like you can, or if you're not full-time and it's the only chart time you get, you can just like monitor that alignment, right? Say, cool, everything's aligned. I'll just hit any of these ranges should work, right?
Also, as well, when you get a range, okay, and it comes down and you get a range like that, right? Everyone's always thinking, okay, this is unmitigated. It's got to come back up to that, right? Think this is going to get used for inducement when it's not, because they're not going to take themselves out until the low goes. Then once the low does go, right, then we use it as inducement, mitigate that. We wait for alignment again, and we just do the same thing, and we just take the range. This is a new low. Done. And that is how I trade. I don't have to get into this, right? I just have to wait, and then I'll just keep playing the ranges. But the most important thing is understanding the higher time frame and trading with that, because otherwise you're just going to get
a
stuck.
good question.
Yes.
Now with this, what you just said, with this being unmitigated and then price respecting the last range and not going further.
Yeah.
Now the question I had before, where I asked Sam about, where he said, yeah, but the above one was unmitigated. That's the reason why I disrespected the small, rather insignificant range to come higher. Like, when do I pick the one and when do I pick the other? When do I say there's an unmitigated range above, so I take this one? And when do I say, no, we don't have met the objective yet, so I take every range that is formed and built and follow the order flow? Like, when I do it live, how can I know which
like
to pick?
alignment, right? So you wait for things to be aligned, right? If your counter 15M, like this is a great example of it, right? Here, right? We have bullish, let's make all this, right? Here we have bullish and 15 order flow, right? So, you know, we get some bearish order flow here, then we get some more bullish order flow here, right? So here, right, we don't want to take, or we can take every range, but it should only be 2 here, right? When that stopped, we then need to wait for a like 15M unmitigated thing, which on 1M, right, is that. So all of this now, because we've had a higher time frame shift, right? So it's about monitoring time frames and what's aligned where, right? If everything is aligned across everything, right? 15M is aligned, 5M, like 4H is aligned with 4H structure and order flow are aligned, 15M structure and order flow are aligned, and then 1M structure and order flow become aligned, right? That's when you can take every range, right? When everything's aligned, right? If everything isn't aligned, then likely things will start getting used for like liquidity and shit like this, right? Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense. I was just wondering about the example where we looked at before. I think that we were aligned. We haven't met the objective yet, which was the low, right? And
But
then it's still tricky, like
It's
which one to
like, because here, right? Yes, we haven't met the ultimate goal of this logo, right? But shit in here starts getting run, right? Like here, all of this, like, you know, this gets run, this comes back to meet this objective here, right? But you have to understand, if we're looking at this, this is fucking significant, right? Like this is big, right? How much money did this cost? Billions, right? So after this, whoever's in control is already positioned up here, right? So they're just going to let the market play out, fill up here again once more because, you know, they've got money to, and then let it dump, get out, pull all their profits, right? All of this is just profit taking, right? All the profits are out of the market, start loading up and buys again, right? Range goes here, right? And this is a significant range. You can just see it from the size of it, right? This is another significant thing, right? Here comes down, right? Fails to take out this low. We see a shift in order flow here, right? So we can trade every range till this high goes now, right? Because we're like this aligned, but in the correct place at that point, right? After breaking a very significant low over here, right? So now likely we'll see a higher time frame pullback, right? So that's why you see all of this shit get respected, right? Then we break another significant high over here, right? We see some funky pullback shit happen, right? Over here even. So we break this high here, right? Then we see this funky pullback shit happen, and then we see the completion of the high time frame objective. Right? And it's just like, this is why like analyzing the market from a multi-time frame perspective is literally the most fucking important thing you can do. Right? So many people like, and I'm pretty positive, guy, like one of the problems that guys who are struggling will have, right, is the fact that they don't look at it properly from a multi-time frame perspective. They look at it, they sit on the 1M, right? Something like that, going, oh, well, the 1M's doing this. Okay, cool, let's do that. Oh, fuck, I just got smashed out, right? Because you're not seeing the bigger fucking picture. Like it's all about the bigger picture. All right, the market, the higher time frame objective is always the key, right? Like now, right? Why are we starting to see, why did we see this deeper pullback? Right? Why has all of this, which looks like it costs a lot, happened? Because we broke a daily low, right? So now we need to see the completion of daily objectives, right? Which is likely coming back into this, or to potentially use this as liquidity and mitigate like the EQ of this, something like that. Right, but it's why like I think I was having this discussion with Suki, right? Saying, you know, like Suki's like, oh, but when it runs this, can't you see this happening? No, I fucking can't, because daily order flow is bearish with daily structure, right? This is this probably has a 1 in 50 chance of taking out that high. Right, so 49 times out of 50, you're going to see that low get run. Right, so just trade towards it. Yeah, you can trade long as well, right? But you have to understand those longs are pullbacks. Right, they're not pro-trend moves because not everything's aligned correctly. Right, you haven't got all of the, like here, we have daily bearish structure, we have daily bearish order flow, right? We get 4H, we have 4H bearish structure, we have 4H bearish order flow. And then whenever we start to get those 15M realignments, you see these big impulsive moves, right?
People can ask some questions now. Or put your hand up, I'll unmute you. I think there's a question from, is it Sharif wants to ask a question?
I think that was earlier, but I'm not sure. But yeah, fire away with some questions, guys. Is there anything in the chat box?
Can you hear me, bro?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So just a quick question, bro. So whenever like with Zapper, you find POI and just this is like the last supply range and we just like keep going, would you still wait for this guy or would you like write overflow from these ones?
It depends, mate. It depends. Like you can't say like it depends what the time frame is doing, right? Like this is why like this picture here is so important to understand, right? Go and back test this shit. Like this is like when you're back testing, right? Don't back test entries and shit like that, right? That's for forward testing because you need patience for that shit. But when you're back testing, back test concepts, right? So like here, right? If this is 4H, right? We have something like this, right? So if we still like, if we haven't broken any ranges, if we're still bearish, like order flow and everything, right? And we then see, right, so then we're seeing 15M like this, right? 15M has bullish order flow, right? And we see it come in and come up to here, right? So we can now like look at saying, okay, once we see 15M order flow change, realign with bearish 4H structure and bearish 4H order flow, right? And then we see a 15M mitigation here, right? Then we can be happy to pretty much trade every 1 minute range on the way down when 1M, because we'll likely see 1M have bullish order flow here. When 1M realigns, right, all these supply ranges are likely to get respected until this low goes, right? And we'll see other pullbacks in here as well, but this is just a very basic example of it, right? But it's that alignment stuff, right? You can't say like, oh, if we see an extreme mitigation is every supply, well, what the fuck is the rest of the market doing? Do you know what I mean? Like it's all about the rest of the market, right? The bigger picture play. Think of it like holistically, right? It's all one big fucking book and it's our job to build the story out.
Yeah, it makes sense, bro. And can I ask like about the entry, even though like this is an order flow, like zone or not?
Sorry, mate. This here,
like because of the the entry that you've taken. Can I ask about it? Because like this is order flow zone, so I don't want to go off topic.
You mean like entry, this entry over here?
Yeah, the 30R that you've taken.
Yeah, I didn't take it, but yeah, like right. So look, let's just run this trade back to front, right? We'll look at like we'll do a whole top down on this trade, right? Like putting it all together, right? So what we see, okay, cool. So we have bearish, like we know daily's bearish, right? We're seeing 4H bearish structure, right? After this low goes hit, so cool, right? 4H bearish structure, right? So here is our range. Right here we see a shift in order flow, but we're working on this here. But here we see this larger shift in order flow here. Right. We also see this smaller range. It's not the best, but it is there. Right. So now, right, we can go down and we can look at 15M stuff. Right. And we can say, okay, cool. Now on 15M, this makes sense. Right. Because we see 15M bearish structure. Right. You notice how order flow and structure are like the same on different time frames, right? So cool, break of structure, right? So we know that at the moment, this daily low over here is weak, right? Because it has failed to break swing structure. So this is likely the overall objective, because this is a daily shift in order flow as well, right? So at the moment, we have daily order flow aligned with bearish, with daily bearish structure. We have 4H bearish order flow aligned with 4H bearish structure, right? Here we have 15M bearish structure, pops down, right? But we have 15M bullish order flow, right? So cool, that's basically our last range, right? So here, right, we want to say, well, where are our significant POIs? Well, we had this one got disrespected. So the next one is this, right? Okay, but we've got bullish order flow, right? So yeah, we can either try and get in here, right, which is a valid trade, or we can wait until 15M order flow goes bearish, right? So we get that 15M change character, right? And if we look, like this is the whole thing, right? So let's build this trade structure first, then SD, then liquidity, right? So here we see, okay, cool. This area has come from a run, 15M bearish structure. So the idea is 15M lower high, right? Cool. So where's that likely to come from? Well, below the protected low, protected high, right? Which is here. Right, this low is weak because it's failed to break swing structure, so likely will be the target, and you shouldn't trade from it. Just trade towards it. Right, so cool. There's the structural idea, lower high, right? SD levels. Yes, we have a very nice SD level up here, right? It's broken, you know, it's reacted to this previous range here. So we can say there's some form of interaction here with buyers and sellers. The whole area has come from a run on liquidity. It's unmitigated. It is a thingy, right? It's an engulfed buy to sell. Right, we've had a liquidity run here. Right, so we've got a very nice SD level, right? Now, do we have any significant, like this is another question we want to ask, right? Do we have any significant demand levels we need to worry about? Not really, right? Because none of this stuff has done anything, right? This is all like it's failed to create anything. Yeah, we have a little thing here, we have stuff here, whatever. But likely this is the objective because all of this is weak and failed to create anything, right? So now liquidity, does it make sense? Well, we've had a build up of liquidity across here. Right, we've had these really nice, this really nice whole pool of liquidity created, right? And we have equal lows here to target plus the weak high, right? So now we want to see, right, 15M order flow go bearish, 15M order flow goes bearish, right? Cool. So now where's our 15M mitigation, right? Well, it's going to be something within this buy to sell, right? Engulfed buy to sell, right? So now we can go and break this down and refine it correctly, right? So there's our range, right? Oh, let me actually do that in a different color. Right, there's our range. So this is the 7:45, right? So we are looking from 7:45 to 8 o'clock, right? Nothing else. Anything else is invalid, and you're going to get stopped, and you're going to ask why, and then I'm going to tell you this every single time, basically. So yeah, 7:45, right? So 7:45 is here, right? 8 o'clock is here, right? So this is our lowest point within that time period. This is our highest point within that time period, right? This is broken, right? So this is not part of this range, and this has failed to mitigate the refinement within that range. Okay, so now let's ask the next questions. Like we'll ask the same 3 questions again, right? Structurally, does this make sense? Yes, right? We're expecting a 15M lower high, right? Okay, SD levels, does this make sense? Yes, this level is an S to D flip because it reacts to this range here. Like there'll be an engulfing here somewhere. Basically, this reacts to it, right? And fails to continue, we get the influx of supply here, right? This gets, this fails to mitigate, right? So this is left for later, right? Liquidity, does it make sense? Yes. This area comes from a run on liquidity, right? And we have all of this juicy looking shit down here, right? Equalize here, you know, all of this liquidity here, right? These lows over here, you know, we just have a ton of liquidity sitting down there, right? So now this is my area that I'm going to look for mitigation, right? Because it makes sense across all of the time frames. I'm not just sitting on one end going, oh yeah, look, there's an unmitigated OB. You know, I've worked this top down, right? You know, we have all of this inducement here, right? Cool, we tap in. All right, for me, I'm seeing, you know, okay, we created like equal highs here, you know, we've got this little bit of liquidity here, we created equal highs here, we mitigate, we give a V-shaped recovery, we see an exchange in orders here, right, because this is our last little point of demand, right, we see a change of character, get in, simple as that, right, wherever the fuck I can get, I will get in. And I like, at this point here, right, because the story is so complete, I do not give a fuck if I take a loss. I will get in again because I know that 8-9 times out of 10, that trade is going to play out, right? So that 1% loss doesn't matter, right? Because the next trade is 130. Right? Does that make sense? Like, as I've broken that whole trade down to all of you lot?
Yeah, the story building is really clean. So just about like the entry, wouldn't you wait for the model that Lewis mentioned? Like when you wait for the 50% of the leg to tap, then you would set a sell stop or buy stop?
No, because I don't, like, for me, right, there's a whole entry model here, right? This is the thing. There's a whole entry model here already, right? You've seen this, look, right? And I want to get in at the top, right? Because I know that there, for me, right, that's the best protected area I'm going to get in, right? Because that high is likely not going to get taken out. Right, so if I can get in at the high, because like we've got that whole model, look, here, we've got creation of liquidity, right, break of structure, right, comes back to the EQ of the leg, comes back to the EQ of the leg, completes the same thing, there's my entry, right, because the model's already complete. Do you see what I mean?
Okay.
You don't have to, you don't have to wait for it to complete again. It's already done, right? You're trying to catch the end of that model, basically. Right? Because that's where the best trades come from. That's why you see anything that I get in that works generally just fucks off.
That because everything's like aligned with each other, so you can just get in there and basically leave it. Because, like you say, you're at the end, everything's been like cleared out of the range and stuff. So
exactly, right? It's all like the whole story is complete there, right? It's like the last page. It's where you find out that Miss Marple fucking murdered Lewis in the billiard room with a fucking dildo. Right?
Yeah, because I thought like we might come back to this guy and like my one pip wasn't covering the house. So I said like, let me just wait for you to pull back, then take the sell, and it just dropped.
Yeah, but here it's not going to come back to this because this isn't actually part of the objective, right here. Oh, what you were thinking it might come back into this guy. Yeah, it might, but here for me, right, this is why I'll be like, okay, well, I'll just short it here because I can get my stop in a protected enough place, right? Because here, right, this is our littler demand range, but here's our whole, supply range, right? So here's our whole larger supply range, right? So yeah, here, this up here doesn't do anything, right? Nothing completes up here. There's no exchange of orders, there's no break of structure, there's no nothing, right? So if I can get my stop above here, right, in a reasonable place, not just like here, you know, because you don't know, this might get used for a little bit of liquidity, something like that, right? But if you can give it a little bit of space above there, this shouldn't get taken out.
Makes sense, bro.
Yeah?
Makes sense. Yeah, so just basic flip, then you would cover the high, not this high, even if you didn't pass 50%. Okay.
Yeah, like have a little
Makes sense.
checklist, you know, what's aligned, what frames are aligned at the moment, right? Once you get everything aligned, then be aggressive.
Yeah, makes sense.
But
It's all good.
if you do miss that entry, you wait for the next 1 minute range to create and you get in.
Yeah, this is the
Doesn't
thing.
matter if you miss that.
Yeah,
Don't feel like you're out of the trade.
No,
Wait for
Yeah.
the next 1 minute range and then take it, because your story's been built and you know that the low's a target. So you just take the next 1M range.
there we go. There's the one in
yeah,
red.
makes sense.
Yeah, and
There's your
what
information.
just to add, I mean, what helped me on Friday when I was trading, and like, just, you know, when you have structure and like flow figured out, I think what really helped me was paying so much attention to engulf candles. And it gave me the confidence that I'm in the right trend, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like, because if we look here, right, why does this not get respected? Because this hasn't mitigated the engulfing, because the engulfing is this, right? This isn't engulfed. This is engulfed. If we go down time frames, oh, look, funnily enough, engulf range gets mitigated and it fucking dies again. Right? Like,
Yeah.
honestly, once all of this shit really sinks in and clicks, right, like this alignment and goal, you know, like when you can see it not as separate elements, but all as one thing, because that's what we're looking at, right? You really please understand this, right? Everything we call anything is all the same fucking thing, right? It's all one big order book made up of like all of these timeframes, right? But like structure, right, is this like lower time frame structure, higher time frame order flow, right? Higher time frame structures, lower time frame order, blah, 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 whatever, right? Liquidity is just another name for supply and demand. Like it's all the same thing, right? So stop thinking of it as all a separate thing and try and think of it as one whole thing, right? And it'll make your lives a lot easier in the end, right? Then you can start really digging into all of the details around it and, you know, figure out how to do this on a day-to-day basis, basically.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you were saying like it's all the same thing, because every time I rewatch all the content, I feel like it's all the same thing. Like we're calling it different stuff, but I just feel like no matter what topic I watch, it's all the same thing, unless like we're specifying something. So yeah.
It's literally all the same thing, right? We just give it different names to give it logic, right? That's it, basically. But yeah.
You know, sorry to interrupt, Sam. This stuff you're explaining about when just basis of, we take that 15-minute structure, then we're going to be probably looking at the 1 minute highs as liquidity to then mitigate the 15-minute POI. Could you by any chance go through that explanation, but on like say the current bit of price action? Obviously we know it's just like a pullback phase, but
now what we'll be looking at. So now, right,
sorry, just for like the sake of, it's pushed up strong. So 15-minute high, like it's created a 15-minute range and then taken that, but then that 15-minute, those equal lows could be to mitigate, say, the push up.
Yeah, so here,
structure,
right, we've got a significant 4H break of structure, right? We've also had a significant daily like run on a low, right? Yeah. So now likely, right, everything else, now likely the objective is daily, right? So now daily we have two things, right? We have this, right? And we have the EQ of this, right? Because this has already been partly mitigated. So we have like the EQ of it, right? And this could end up getting used as liquidity, right? But we have the EQ. Fuck me, I drew that well, didn't I? Sorry, I was really impressed with myself there. But yeah, all right. Now 4H, what have we got? Right, okay, 4H, we have this, right? Could see the mitigation of this because this is above a point of liquidity, right? But this is also valid for now because this is above a point of liquidity as well, right? But we are going to have to break 4H order flow to get here, right? So here, I mean, here we can look at 1M stuff, right? Because it's an extreme. Anywhere else within this whole range, right? But these are, yeah, a few other things, but yeah, we have this whole larger range. So if we see a 15M shift in order flow in here somewhere, cool, we can trade that, right? Because it's all aligned together. Well, enough stuff is aligned, right? If we see a run on this high into this, or potentially, you know, into this, something like that, right? And there's various things that it could hit up here. We need to go and break down every POI and all of that sort of stuff, like on lower time frames. But yeah, like we'd be looking at, you know, this, any engulfed buy to sell price action, basically, right? So this, right? And then this should give us mostly significant POIs on 15, right? We could even say there's something in here, you know, in these wicks. It's very small, but 4H is generally small, right? But now this gives us good areas to look for POIs, right? Look, this looks, you know, if it comes to this looks absolutely great to me, right? Or something up here, because here we can see again that we've got interaction, but here we can wait for 1M stuff, right? Anywhere in here, we need to wait for 15M stuff to change, right? Because we're bullish, like we've got bullish order flow, right? So we need to wait for bearish order flow unless we hit an extreme, right? If we hit an extreme, we can wait for lower time frame shifts because we can assume that higher time frame will take control.
Yeah. And if,
right?
Sorry to interrupt, Sam, but if you were, say, looking to play this, say, this long for the pullback, looking at this to, like you just marked on that bearish order flow there, which is, well, it's bullish order flow now. Even though we've got that 15-minute range there and then the break of that structure, because we've now taken out technically like a 4-hour intraday high, would we now technically kind of be looking at this 15-minute range as liquidity, or would you 50 say it could be either?
Yeah, it could be. It always could be either, right? We don't actually know, because some like complex pullbacks especially are much harder to trade.
Yeah.
Right, because we may see something like this, and then they might need to come down because at the moment this low has formed fairly aggressively, right? What they might need to do is like mitigate, right? Create liquidity, right? And then continue the move up to mitigate something in here to run this liquidity here that they're generating now, right? And then cause this drop here, right? That's one thing that we might see, you know, like there's always a bunch of things we can see happen, right? Especially in complex pullbacks, we might see, you know, something like this happen as well, right? And this generates liquidity for the later move down.
Yeah.
Right? This can move up, and we see, you know, this shift up here, and then this goes again.
Brilliant. Yeah. That's cleared up. Brilliant. Nice one.
And it's just trying to think of that, you know, like what am I expecting the 4-hour to do, right? How will that present on the 15M? Right. Okay. Now, what am I expecting the 15M to do? How will that present on 1 minute? Right. But it's top down, never bottom up. Right. Never think, what am I expecting the 1M to do? How is that going to present on 15M? Do you know what I mean? It makes no sense. Right.
Yeah.
Right, because
awesome.
I'm looking at the wrong way. Make sense to everyone?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of hands up.
Yeah.
Cyber, unmute yourself. I think you've got a question.
Hello, could you hear me?
Yes.
All right, yeah. So how can you tell when to use market order or place a limit order? Just like in your sample earlier, wherein you cannot enter at that point at the second time frame unless you market execute.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use limits, mate. That's it. I haven't used a limit for 6 months. Like because I prefer to, like, a lot of my entry shit is based on intuition, right? Because I can see that shit really fast because I've spent a long time looking at it and I know the high value areas to trade, right? All of the decisions are already made, so it's just my job to click buy or sell when I think I can get in with a 1 pip stop, basically. And there I would feel comfortable with that because I would see, you know, I can get my stop high enough, right? So it's just like that. It's kind of, I don't really know how to that's the bit I would struggle to explain most about my trading, because it's the bit that has the least logic, right? Because a lot of it's intuitive. Like when you're making decisions on a 5-second chart, you don't really have time to think about shit, right? It's a decision. Make the decision, live with the consequences.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think I just need to practice more on the 10 seconds time frame.
Everything in trading is practice, right? It's like anything. The more you practice something, the better you get it, right? The more you see price, the more you understand all of this shit, right?
Cool. Yep, cool. Thank you.
No worries, problem. Yeah, someone else?
Mihai, I think, got his hand up.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask you, in terms of objectives, how do you look at them? Like, for example, if you initiate out from a 15-minute range and then you pull back into that range, when do you say that the objective has been met for the pullback? Is it when you get an order flow shift on a lower time frame, or?
Normally when you get an order flow shift on the 15M, like again, it depends, right? So
yeah,
say this had presented differently, right? Say this had presented just one drop and created no supply within the leg, right? Then we could say, yeah, up here, the objective is met when we see a nice clean shift in 1M order flow, right?
Yeah.
But because we shift in order flow, right? We have like this, right? Then we can say the objective is met when we see a nice clean shift in 15M order flow.
And at that point, the target would be this low here that you draw.
Yeah, that we like.
Then you could expect a pullback to this whole range and follow order flow. And when it changes again, this is the target.
Yeah.
Literally, yeah.
That's
like
it.
it's, yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for answering.
No worries at all. Any more for any more?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yeah, fire away, bro.
Essentially, so we're talking about how to trade when all the time frames are aligned and when structure is aligned. My question was, what kind of precautions or change to your management / approach will you take when you've got kind of mismanaged, misaligned time frames, like H4 one way, M15 one way? Yeah.
Well, this is where when you're trading complex pullback, right, and just be more selective about shit. Like only pick the nicest looking levels, the bits that make the most sense. Do you know what I mean? Like instead of saying like, because here, right? I mean, now we look at this on this time frame, this makes complete sense because this pulls back to a 15 average, right? But if we were in a complex pullback, there's no fucking chance I'd look at this, right? Because I think, well, that's probably liquidity for this mitigation here.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Right, because the complex pullback, generally, they like to build liquidity, so they pull back more to extremes, right? To create these big pools of liquidity, right? When they're pro trend, they're after this liquidity, right? So mostly they're just trading aggressively towards it, right? Like here, you see how big this complex pullback is? It creates all of this liquidity down here, right? Like this takes all of this liquidity. So this is now a big liquidity pool. This generates, and you see how deep like they pull back all the time, right? So you've got basically this whole fucking massive pool of liquidity here, right? Because during the complex pullback phase, they tend to pull back deeper, right? And then you see here, they're not pulling back as deep, right? So just trade from like be much more aware of premium discount, much more aware of like the 30 and 70%, stuff like that.
Yeah, cool. Makes sense.
Yeah. And this is why like that last Zoom we did, I was banging on about phases so much because it's so important to understand phases from a multi-time frame perspective as well, right? Am I in a 4H and daily pro trend move, or am I in like a 4H pro trend move, a daily fucking pullback? You know, there's hundreds of things to consider, but it's just getting like the main thing to be aware of is, am I in a pullback? Am I in a pro trend impulse?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
I think sometimes you've got to ask yourself though, if you are trading a complex pullback, why are you trading a complex pullback?
Yeah.
You know, to find like consistency, just be patient and just wait for everything. That's when you're going to find true consistency. When you keep trying to, you know, trading pullbacks and complex pullbacks, the amount of losses you're going to take is going to be a lot higher than trading when everything's aligned.
Yeah.
Everyone always wants to be in trades. It's just a thing. I think everyone just wants to trade. But sometimes you've got to sit on your hands and think, right, You know, wait until everything aligns, set some alerts, and trade. Stay, because that's how I found consistency. And
Yeah, I think
when I do
being
start,
able to not trade is a big skill.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Patience
really,
is the main thing. Patience.
being able to know when to stay the fuck out of the market is probably more important than knowing when to get in the market.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you to both of you for answering that.
No problem. I think that's about it. I don't see any more questions.
Yeah. All right. Cool, guys. Lovely to chat to you all. I'm going to go off and continue to die. Yeah. Bye. Have a good weekend.
Bye. Thanks, guys.
See you later.
Thank you.